one city in the country where blacks and whites lived amicably, Wilmington, North Carolina. However, that would be short-lived as white supremacists refused to accept that same reality could be replicated elsewhere. With hate-fueled fury, they would stage the only successful coup in the history of our nation and leave future black generations fighting for what they feel they are owed.
This is the story of an American election, but also of something we don't usually find in American history: the violent overthrow of a democratically elected government.
Walking on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, no, turn me around.
Republicans in North Carolina were successful in part because of a third party called the Populist Party, made up of mostly white farmers fed up with the tough economic times. North Carolina populists joined up with Republicans to form what they called the Fusion Party. And in the elections of 1894 and 1896, the Fusion Party defeated the Democrats in sweeping victories statewide. That meant North Carolina now had a government that shared power between black and white politicians, including a newly elected Republican governor. Together, they moved towards reforms that would favor black Americans and working-class whites.
Wilmington, prior to November 1898, was what the New South could be at the cusp of the 20th century.
There was an unusual degree of black prosperity.
In Wilmington, there were successful black entrepreneurs, doctors, teachers, but also black elected officials. And for a time, that was true throughout the state. Take a look at the politicians on this poster of the 1889 North Carolina House of Representatives. Here at the bottom are black Republican representatives, some from Wilmington. North Carolina also sent 4 black Republicans to the U.S. Congress between 1875 and 1899. The state Democratic Party handbook for 1898 laid out their goal: consolidate the white vote by stoking white anger and resentment. It said, "This is a white man's country and white men must control and govern."
Black men threatening white women. White men need to do all that they can to protect white women.
There was a speech that was given the year before in 1897 by this woman, Rebecca Latimer Felton of Georgia. And essentially the article said, all black men have one thing that they want to do in life, and that's to rape white women. And so we need to do everything we can to protect white womanhood. And if that means lynching a black man a day, then she says lynch. So that speech was run as an article in the Wilmington papers in August of 1898.
The Democrats had won the election, but their goal of total white supremacist control remained out of reach.
And so they engineered what was essentially a coup d'etat.
Ain't gonna let discrimination turn me around, turn me around.
It was this man, Alfred Moore Waddell, who led the men with torches to the black newspaper and burned it to the ground just days after the white supremacists swept the election in November of 1898. They stormed City Hall, throwing out the racially diverse city leaders who still had another year in office. And they used this rapid-fire gun at the time to execute black people in the streets. By some estimates, as many as 300 died.
Hundreds of white men marched to the offices of the Daily Record. They set the Daily Record building on fire. Waddell, who once threatened to fill the Cape Fear River with black bodies, was the new mayor of Wilmington. Meanwhile, the mob had grown to about 2,000 men, and the violence spilled into the streets.
That white mob, see a group of black men standing here, as they did every day at the local newsstand, talking about what's the large fire across town we're seeing, and they order this group of men to disperse and get off the streets. These men refused. They begin firing that rapid gun on people who are standing here at this corner. After these events in 1898, up until the year about 1900, about 3,500 black families and residents leave Wilmington, never to return.
and in the newspapers depicted black residents as the instigators.
This image is a gross misrepresentation of what actually happened during 1898. You know, what you see is African American men with guns, not white men with machine guns.
The city never regained its black majority population. Jim Crow laws like literacy tests and poll taxes that prevented black people from voting were immediately enacted. Over the years, the textbooks on North Carolina's history have struggled to accurately describe what happened in 1898. This one from 1933 says the situation was unfortunate for both races. And this one from 1978 doesn't have that much more detail. But they both praise Charles Aycock, a politician who helped perpetrate the riot. They say he had a keen mind and a kind heart, and that, in fact, he was one of the best friends that the colored people had in the state. Turn on the news, and the state's long history of political suppression echoes.
A strict new voter ID law in North Carolina, racial gerrymandering, and a push for new voting maps.
The court says the Republican-led legislature redrew congressional districts along racial lines, violating the Constitution.
This strategy shifts towards designing state laws in such a way that you can exclude blacks from voter participation.